The storm had been threatening all day. Out in the rolling hills at the edge of the savannah, the air felt heavy, electric, as though the land itself was holding its breath. By dusk, the clouds had gathered thick and dark, their underbellies glowing with faint pulses of lightning. A storm was coming, one of those that swept down from the highlands, sudden and violent, turning dry gullies into rivers and rocky slopes into torrents of mud. For Malik, a young shepherd tending his family's goats, the first drops of rain brought no surprise. He had seen storms gather before. What startled him was something else, the thin, plaintive cry that rose from the canyon below, half drowned by the roll of thunder. It was not the bleating of a goat. It was sharper, desperate, and carried a wildness that made his skin prickle. He stood at the edge of the rocky slope, listening. Again the cry came, high-pitched and quivering, echoing faintly against stone. Malik's first thought was of a baby goat, maybe one that had slipped. But the sound was different. He knew it in his bones. It was the cry of something wild. Something in trouble. Malik hesitated. The canyon was steep, and night was falling. But he also knew the rangers often asked villagers to report signs of injured animals. With storms and predators, many never survived the night. He pulled his cloak tight against the first cool gusts of rain and set off toward the ranger outpost. The rangers arrive. Ian and Lindai were still finishing their evening patrol when Malik came running into camp, breathless, raindrops streaking his face. "There's something in the gorge," he said quickly. "A cub. It cries like it's dying." The two rangers exchanged glances. They trusted Malik, the boy had sharp ears and a shepherd's instinct for the land. "Show us," Ian said. They set out at once, headlights of the land cruiser cutting across the rocky track. By the time they reached the gorge, night had fully descended, the hills glowing silver each time lightning flashed. Rain began to pour in earnest, drumming on the metal roof, turning dust into slick clay. At the canyon's rim, Malik pointed downward. Through the darkness, in the brief strobe of lightning, Ian saw movement, something small pressed against a rock ledge halfway down the slope. Then came the cry, thin, raw, and carried upward by the wind. "It's a leopard cub," Lindai whispered. The sound confirmed it, the rasping, broken call of a young leopard separated from its mother. The descent. Getting down was the first challenge. The gorge walls were jagged, covered with loose stones that the rain was already turning treacherous. Ian tied a rope to a stunted acacia at the rim, testing its roots before looping it around his waist. "I'll go," he said. Lindai frowned. "It should be me, I'm lighter. And if the ledge crumbles, you won't have the strength to hold the cub and climb." "I will." Lightning cracked, so bright it turned night to day for a heartbeat. In that flash, Ian caught sight of the cub, its body trembling, sides heaving with shallow breaths, fur slick and plastered from the rain. It crouched with its back against the wall of stone, too weak even to move. Ian descended slowly, boots sliding against wet rock, hands gripping the rope until his knuckles burned. Pebbles rattled free beneath him, clattering down into the darkness where a stream now rushed, swollen by the storm. Every step carried risk. The rain was relentless, washing grit into his eyes, soaking his uniform. At last, his boots scraped against the narrow ledge. The cub flinched at his presence, baring tiny teeth, but its strength gave out almost immediately. Its growl dissolved into a weak whimper. "Easy," Ian murmured, crouching low. "I won't hurt you." The rescue. Up close, the cub's condition was worse than he feared. Its ribs stood out sharply beneath wet fur, its legs too frail to hold weight. Hunger and cold had drained it nearly to collapse. Ian slipped his cloak from his shoulders and carefully wrapped it around the shivering body. The cub resisted for a moment, but then, as thunder rolled above them, it pressed into the warmth, as though realizing this stranger was its only shield. Above, Lindai tightened her grip on the rope. "You have it?" she called over the roar of rain. "Yes," Ian answered. "Pull steady." The climb upward was brutal. One arm held the fragile bundle tight against his chest, the other clung to the rope. Twice his boot slipped on slick stone, sending cascades of gravel tumbling into the torrent below. Each time, his heart lurched, knowing a single misstep could cost both their lives. The cub shifted once, a faint whimper escaping the folds of the cloak, but otherwise it lay limp, its head resting against Ian's arm. That tiny gesture, trust given in the middle of fear, fueled his strength. At last, hands reached down from above. Lindayu and Malik hauled him the final stretch, pulling both ranger and cub onto solid ground. Shelter from the storm. The three crouched together at the rim, rain pelting down, breathing hard. For a moment, none spoke. The cub gave a faint sigh, eyes fluttering shut, still wrapped in Ian's cloak. "We have to get it warm," Lindayu said. They hurried to the land cruiser, the storm lashing around them. Inside, with doors shut, the sound softened to a drumbeat on metal. Ian kept the cub against his chest, rubbing gently to coax circulation. Malik stared wide-eyed from the back seat. "I've never seen one so close," the boy whispered. "It shouldn't be alone," Ian said quietly. "Its mother may have been killed, or driven away." The thought hung heavy in the air. At the field station. By midnight they reached the small field station. The storm raged outside, but within the dim light of the infirmary, quiet purpose took over. A veterinarian, summoned by radio, examined the cub, malnourished, dehydrated, and chilled to the bone, but alive. A slow infusion of fluids, warmth from heat lamps, and careful feeding with a dropper began the long process of recovery. Ian stayed close, unwilling to leave. At one point, when the cub stirred and whimpered, he laid his palm gently along its back. The tiny body relaxed under his touch, breathing steadier. In that moment, Ian felt something shift inside him, a bond formed not through ownership, but through shared survival on the cliff face. Recovery. Days passed. The cub regained strength little by little, its eyes brightening, its steps steadier. It would hiss when strangers approached, but when Ian entered, it watched with wary curiosity rather than fear. He never forced contact, only sat nearby, letting the cub choose. Sometimes, when he placed his cloak in its enclosure, the cub would curl upon it, as though remembering the stormy night when that fabric was its shield. Malik visited once, eyes shining at the sight of the recovering animal. "It's stronger now," he said proudly, as though he, too, had saved it. "Yes," Ian agreed. "Strong enough, one day, to return to the hills." Release. Weeks later, under a calm morning sky, the day came. The land cruiser rumbled back to the same hills, this time under clear sunshine. Ian carried the cub, now heavier, muscles filled with new strength, to the gorge rim. The animal wriggled, sensing freedom, and when he set it down, it paused only a moment, looking back with those sharp amber eyes. For an instant, Ian saw recognition there, a flicker of memory, of the night when a human hand had lifted it from despair. Then it bounded into the rocks, vanishing into tall grass, its spotted coat melting into shadows. The hills were quiet again, save for the sigh of wind. But Ian felt the bond would remain, invisible yet unbreakable, between a ranger and the life he had pulled from the storm. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next episodes.